This is exactly when some big bombshell stuff gets dropped. Someone online is saying there might be some new text messages getting revealed.
Because it came up about the whole "it ends with us" drama and the legal saga. And I feel like more and more people are starting to come to the point where they're realizing Blake Lively very clearly is not telling the truth.
Our followers knew amid filming Blake Lively barged in an unprofessionally overstepped role as actress. Whispers say new texts may surface unfavorable for Blake, a calculated diva careening a career. "It Ends With Us" drama is alienating Hollywood. Ryan Reynolds can't fix.
Brace yourselves, everyone, because just when we thought Hollywood feuds couldn't get any messier, a judge stepped in and practically flipped Blake Lively's entire case on its head. We're talking about secret evidence that came out of nowhere, shocking lawyers on both sides, and leaving fans absolutely reeling. If you're wondering how a straightforward complaint spiraled into chaos overnight, stick around, because the details of this courtroom clash are downright mind-blowing. So here's the kicker. The judge didn't just poke holes in Blake's story, he shut it down in front of everyone. That's right, he basically held a giant spotlight over certain claims from Lively's side and said, "Not buying it." Then came the real bombshell: hidden evidence. Rumor has it that undisclosed documents, transcripts, and receipts are now front and center, turning what might have been a routine back and forth into a full-blown legal meltdown. But that's just the beginning of this jaw-dropping legal roller coaster. Turns out, Lively's legal team was certain they'd found a magic shield, some little-known rule that would automatically send the other side packing. Problem is, the judge didn't buy it at all. In fact, the more her lawyers insisted, the more the judge seemed to dig through every line of evidence. And that's where things got really interesting. According to insiders, the so-called slam dunk argument practically fizzled out in real time. And if you ask me, nothing spices up a Hollywood showdown like a courtroom twist that nobody sees coming. Now, fair warning, everything we're about to discuss is tied up in a civil suit, so there aren't any criminal charges swirling around this fiasco. At least not yet. But don't let that fool you. This fight is shaping up to be nastier than half the criminal trials out there. Allegations are flying everywhere, from sexual harassment to extortion to defamation. Like a buffet of Hollywood scandal, with each claim juicier than the last. And yes, rumor has it that every party involved has receipts. Because in Tinseltown, it's never enough to say you're right. You've got to prove it with piles of emails, text messages, even random scribbled notes if they've got them. That said, one of the biggest eye-openers here is the element of creative control. People close to the case are whispering that Lively, who was supposedly just the star of the show, had a sudden urge to do more than just act. She allegedly wanted the final say on every camera angle, each new script tweak, even the promotional tour schedule. To some folks, that's just a confident artist flexing her influence, but to others, especially the opposing side, it might be something a whole lot darker, like leveraging serious accusations to expand her power behind the scenes. And that, dear viewers, is exactly where the extortion claim comes into play. Picture this. You've got a leading lady locked in a creative tug-of-war with her director or producers, or maybe both. Reports claim she threatened not to show up for press or promotions if she didn't get her way, like who sees the daily footage, who's allowed on set, what edit gets the final green light. Meanwhile, her attorneys argued these demands were perfectly valid because the environment on set was, in her words, uncomfortable and unprofessional. Which side is telling the truth? Hard to say, especially when both parties are presenting a mountain of he said, she said evidence in open court. But the judge's comments so far suggest they're not exactly drinking Blake Lively's Kool-Aid. Of course, you might be thinking, wait, are these folks allowed to file suit for anything that comes to mind? Well, in civil court, you can toss in all kinds of claims, as long as you have a semi-plausible argument. Legal watchers say that's exactly what happened here. Lively filed her allegations, and the other side fired back with their own accusations of defamation and, yes, extortion, essentially claiming she made everything up for personal gain. At times, the back and forth has read less like a lawsuit and more like an all-out smear campaign, with each side swearing the other is orchestrating a masterful narrative. Now, let's talk about the so-called hidden evidence. When the judge started poking around, certain transcripts and documents emerged that apparently rattled Lively's legal team. And we're not talking about a random email or two. We're talking entire timelines, sequences of phone calls, potential recordings, you name it. According to rumors, some documents directly undercut the notion that Lively was purely a victim. Instead, they point to her not just expecting creative control, but demanding it from day one. Insiders say that if this evidence is indeed legit, it might show that her claims of harassment were oddly intertwined with constant reminders that she wanted a bigger piece of the production pie. Could it still be harassment? Sure, but the presence of these new materials forces the court to consider whether she was mixing personal grievances with career-driven motives. What's more, the judge is apparently tired of the finger pointing. Multiple sources claim that whenever Lively's attorneys try to paint the entire fiasco as simple payback for her coming forward, the judge reminds them that the other side might have reams of contradictory proof, and that's the heart of a civil case, folks. You have to weigh both sides fairly. It's not enough to scream retaliation if the other party can show factual evidence of something like extortion. So, while Lively's lawyers want the case tossed out, invoking legal shields that protect people who speak up about sensitive issues, there's still that giant, but what if she was using these allegations to strong-arm them? Questions swirling around. And courts do not like to ignore that question. If you thought that was the only bombshell, buckle up. The set of allegations also includes scenes on film that Lively wrote and directed herself, which might appear contradictory to her claims of feeling uncomfortable performing those very scenes. For instance, there's a moment that's been described as simulated intimacy, which she reportedly helped create, but later called humiliating and exploitative. Again, I have to stress, we don't know if she was genuinely pressured into it or felt coerced in some way. All we know is that the other side claims she orchestrated it, front to back. If true, that severely complicates the argument that she was purely a victim. And you can bet the judge is going to want clarity on that sooner rather than later. Then, there's the talk of inappropriate conversations behind the scenes. Lively's team points to moments when the director or producers allegedly discussed topics like sexual fantasies or orgasms in her presence. She claims it was deeply uncomfortable and not work-related. Her adversaries counter that it was no different from typical planning discussions for a romantic storyline. Basically, method acting talk. They say she contributed to these chats just as much. So now you have a total meltdown of context. One party insists they were only focusing on script authenticity, while the other says it was a warped environment full of personal oversharing and borderline harassment. And get this, apparently, a key figure who played a critical role in a birth scene was a personal friend of the director. Lively's side paints that as beyond invasive. Someone she considered a random buddy stepping in to do a moment that put her in a highly vulnerable, nearly nude position. The producers say, no, this person is a trained actor who's done serious stage work and actually won awards. The judge now has to figure out if that's a total excuse or a legitimate defense. Either way, the optics are awkward. Casting your pal to be up close and personal during a simulated birth scene doesn't exactly scream comfort for anyone involved. But does it rise to the level of harassment? That's the million-dollar question. None of this has even touched on the crazy saga of 47.1, the code Lively's team brandished like a legal sword. The gist is, if you're bringing forth serious claims of harassment or assault, the law can shield you from certain defamation countersuits. But, and it's a big but, it won't save you if the court decides your main motivation was something else, like sabotage or blackmail. In other words, you can't hide behind legal protections if it's proven you manipulated the situation for profit or control. And that's precisely where the judge seems stuck. If Lively was earnestly blowing the whistle on toxic on-set behavior, that's one thing. If she twisted an environment to claim harassment, meanwhile racking up demands for editing and full creative authority, that's another matter entirely. Rumors suggest that at one point, the judge practically asked her team, so are these claims part of a countersuit or your main story? Because you're writing them like you're the plaintiff in a brand new case, but also like you're defending yourself from their extortion allegations. A big no-no in legal strategy is confusing the court, and apparently that confusion runs deep here. Lively's lawyers are trying to keep the focus on her accusations of harassment, while the other side insists, wait, this is about more than that. Look at the timeline. See how everything lines up to give her more leverage. It's a cat and mouse game, with the judge telling them both to cut the noise and present concrete proof. Yet for all the legal complexities, there's a human side to this. People are asking whether Lively truly felt devalued or exploited on a set where men were allegedly intruding on personal moments. One account claims a producer walked into her trailer at the worst time, leading to an embarrassing stare down. The producer's side says they were invited in, had no clue she'd be half-dressed or pumping breast milk, and apologized profusely for any accidental eye contact. So, is that shady harassment, or is it just an unfortunate misunderstanding? If you poll 10 different people, you might get 10 different answers. The unpredictability here is almost comedic, if it weren't so unsettling. One moment, you read a legal filing that makes Lively sound like the ultimate victim, cornered by powerful men who disrespect boundaries. The next moment, you see a response that frames her as the puppet master, controlling narratives and playing the victim whenever it suits her. Throw in a judge who's obviously not convinced by superficial arguments, and you've got a recipe for a blockbuster legal showdown. Like an actual Hollywood script, except real lives and reputations are on the line. By now, you're probably thinking, where's the proof? And that's exactly what the judge keeps asking. Are we looking at actual behind-the-scenes logs showing suspicious text messages? Or are we dealing with an actress reinterpreting normal filmmaking processes as harassment to gain sympathy? Did the producers maliciously corner her for personal gratification? Or is that a warped read on standard set dynamics? The truth, as always, might lie somewhere in the middle, and the next few hearings might drag that truth kicking and screaming into the light. Meanwhile, Lively's motion to dismiss is hanging by a thread. If the judge decides that the extortion angle is credible enough to override her claims of absolute legal protection, she's in trouble. That's because 47.1 is not an all-encompassing get-out-of-jail-free card if your hands aren't exactly clean. The problem, from her point of view, is that the more they push the harassment narrative without addressing the timeline that shows she wanted bigger creative control, the more suspicious it looks. And rumor has it, the hidden evidence specifically showcases how her requests changed from standard contract items to increasingly aggressive demands. Coincidentally, right around the time she began claiming she felt endangered on set. This is where the meltdown has truly caught everyone off guard. What began as a presumably sincere complaint about on-set misconduct has mutated into a labyrinth of alternative motivations. Not to mention, the success of the final product, apparently, the film did extremely well at the box office, makes the extortion claim even spicier. One side suggests she wanted to hitch her name to a smash hit by taking over editing rights, all while building a separate harassment lawsuit to keep the studio cowering in fear. It's like a Hollywood power grab if the allegations hold up. Conversely, if you believe Lively's version, she saw the writing on the wall. It was a hostile work environment. She had no intention of letting them off the hook, so she demanded more control to protect herself. Which story do you believe? The judge, in previous hearings, has given signals that they're not going to rubber stamp any motion to dismiss without thorough evidence on both sides. Courtroom witnesses say you could practically see the frustration etched onto the judge's face. Stop telling me what you want me to believe. Show me why I should. The worst thing for Lively is that each newly surfaced transcript or record appears to contradict at least some part of her narrative. It's not that she can't still prevail. Maybe the judge will ultimately see that her entire complaint stands up, especially if the extortion claims turn out to be half-baked. But as of now, her lawyers are working overtime to minimize damage from these bombshell revelations. In any normal Hollywood drama, this is the moment where you'd get a triumphant speech or some behind-the-scenes hero emerging with a decisive piece of evidence. Real life, though, is messy. Lively's side argues that the supposed big evidence is taken out of context. Random notes that could have been part of an ongoing script rewrite. The producers insist it's an undeniable pattern of controlling behavior on her part. The only real authority here is the judge, and so far, they seem determined to let this go to trial if any element of it looks credible. Now, if you're still glued to this saga, you're not alone. Fans of Blake Lively are stunned seeing their beloved star in a new light. Some sympathetic, some skeptical. Industry insiders are keeping a close watch too, because if these extortion claims are proven, it changes the game for how harassment and creative disputes might be handled in future. If you can't easily wave the "it's harassment, therefore you can't sue me" banner without a judge investigating your motivations, certain studios might feel emboldened to counterclaim. That's huge in an era where Hollywood is trying to navigate accountability, transparency, and a host of #MeToo revelations. And let's not forget about you, dear viewers, sifting through allegations, denials, partial confessions. potential conspiracies, and who knows what else. It's exhausting. Sometimes you just want to watch a movie or follow your favorite star on social media without diving into a war zone of legal jargon. Yet here we are, unraveling the alleged meltdown and scanning transcripts like amateur sleuths. The question is, does any side have a real smoking gun? If so, the judge hasn't revealed it yet. But at the rate secrets are popping up, I wouldn't be shocked if a bombshell piece of evidence surfaced next week, something that either proves Blake Lively's claims undeniably true or reveals them as a cunning manipulation. What happens next? We wait. The court schedule dictates upcoming hearings, deadlines for each side to produce more documents, maybe depositions where people have to sit down under oath and tell their side of the story. That alone can tilt the case if someone contradicts themselves or if an offhand remark cements a crucial point. If the judge decides that the extortion angle is strong enough to overshadow Lively's motion to dismiss, we could see a trial. And a trial means testimonies, cross-examinations, day-by-day drama that's sure to be front-page news in all the tabloids. To me, that's both thrilling and sad. Thrilling because, hey, who doesn't love a big Hollywood meltdown with fancy attorneys and shocking reveals? But sad because real people's reputations are on the line. And if it turns out that the truth is way simpler, maybe it was just a bungled production with poor communication, then all of this might be heartbreakingly overblown. Unfortunately, that's showbiz, a land where rumor can become reality in a snap, and a single misinterpretation can balloon into a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Now, before I let you go, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think there's any chance these harassment claims will stick if the extortion evidence is as strong as the producers are hinting? Are we looking at a scenario where a well-known star might have orchestrated a grand takeover of a high-stakes production under the guise of feeling unsafe? Or is it possible the environment really was uncomfortable and she had to seize control? To protect herself? We're all speculating from the outside. But once a case hits the courtroom, speculation meets facts, or at least the best version of facts each side can present. Let's keep the conversation going. Comment below, tell me what you believe is happening here, or if you're as mind-blown by this entire fiasco as I am. And if you enjoyed hanging out with me for this deep dive, consider hitting that like button. It's a small click, but it goes a long way to support the channel. And hey, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future updates. Trust me, this story has more surprises up its sleeve, and you'll want to be the first to hear the next jaw-dropper. Finally, if you're ready to explore more Hollywood bombshells, don't go anywhere yet. There's another video on your screen right now. Click it to dive into even more celebrity meltdowns, shocking reveals, and behind-the-scenes secrets that'll leave you speechless. I'll catch you over there in a second. In the meantime, stay curious, stay skeptical, and buckle up, because this saga is far from over.